Hare Krishna everyone. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavad. So today's session is about the history of Bhagavad Gita. So let us understand what is Gita, where it came from, how old it is, and who spoke this and why did he speak this. I'm sure all of you know who spoke this, but what was the purpose behind him speaking this? So, firstly, let's understand the title of Bhagavad Gita. The word Bhagavad comes from the word Bhagwan. And who is Bhagwan? Lord Krishna is Bhagwan. And where does the word Gita comes from? Gita. Gita comes from the word Geet, song. And that's why we sometimes call it the song of God. Bhagavad Gita is a song of God. That's why the meaning of Bhagavad Gita we can relate today. Bhagavad means God and Gita means song, song of God. So, Bhagavad Gita originally is actually an episode of Mahabharat. Mahabharat means Greater India. So, Greater India means Mahabharat, Greater India. There was no country on this earth 5000 years ago. When Gita was spoken, there was no country. It was all Bharatvarsha. And slowly it got divided into many countries. Just like we can remember Pakistan got divided from India. Pakistan was a part of India and it got divided into two countries at the time of independence. Similarly, Bhutan, Bangladesh, we can recall those. But similarly, everything was Bharata. And they all got split into many nations. So it might be surprising to all of you or most of you, but it is true that the entire planet Earth was Bharata 5000 years ago. And who was ruling the planet Earth? 5000 years ago, Maharaj Parikshit, he was a ruler of entire earth. He was ruling this entire earth according to the religious principles. Do you know who is Maharaj Parikshit? Yes, absolutely. Son of Abhimanyu. And who is Abhimanyu? Son of Arjun. Yes. So, Maharaj Parikshit was the grandson of Arjun. So, everything Parikshit Maharaj did was for the pleasure of the Lord. He was ruling the entire earth as per the spiritual practices. If there was any injustice to an innocent citizen, he would personally go on his chariot with his sword to personally deal with these situations and give justice based on the religious principles. So once there was a cow and the bull, they were mistreated by a king. Actually that king was Kali, personified in the disguise of a king. And when Parikshit Maharaj saw how the cow and the bull were mistreated, he became so angry that he wanted to almost destroy that king immediately. Such was the love for the cows and the bulls at that time. Cows were considered to be the mother and the bull were considered to be the father. Cow would give milk to everyone just like mother, and bulls would work at the farms just like the father would work at the farm. So this was the Indian culture. At that time, Yudhishthir Maharaj, when he was a king, cows were so much loved that the milk of the cows that would spill from their udders, from their breasts, and the entire earth would have the milk spilling over all over the earth. That was the milk coming from the out of love that cows were receiving from people, from the environment that was there. This was the culture of India. This was the culture of Greater India. Life was lived based on the religious principles, not man made principles. It was lived on the spiritual principles, on the Vedas, the principles coming from the Vedic scriptures, Aparishya Gyan, not the man manufactured Parishya Gyan. And you can imagine we are so fortunate that we have taken birth in this nation with such a great spiritual heritage. Today all the countries outside of India, they may be materially rich, richer than India, but they are spiritually starving. They are very poor spiritually. And India might be materially poor, but India is spiritually very rich. The richest nation on this planet even today. In fact, spirituality is the greatest asset that India has. And this asset is the only way how India can become the greatest nation again on this entire planet. There is nothing else which is more powerful that India has than the knowledge of spirituality, than the Aparashya Gyan, because all the other nations, they don't have it. You see, so many of these foreigners, they come to India in the seeking of spiritual knowledge. There is not much really materially that they come here for. They come here for spiritual seeking, because this is the greatest power that India has from time immemorial. And unfortunately today, the youngsters, they get so much mesmerized by the material world, Western world, that they want to leave their country and go and settle themselves there. But this is not the right approach to life. We are living in a country which has got such rich spiritual heritage. We should plan our life here. We should learn from here. We should go on the path of self-realization in India. This is the only place where we can do all this. And then we should spread that course of self-realization, the knowledge of self-realization, to the entire world. So this nation actually is a nation of education, true education, but not the education that is coming from the English education to us, the true education which is in our Vedic scriptures. So, back to Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Srila Prabhupada says. And who did he speak to? His dear friend Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra around 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago means 50 centuries ago. 1 century is 100 years, and 50 centuries have passed when this message was given to Arjuna by Lord Krishna. Now, Gita has a very unique position in the world, as this is the only book in the world that contains directly the actual words spoken by Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. You can find many religious and philosophical books in the world, but there is no book except Bhagavad Gita which claims to contain the direct actual words spoken by God. So there is no scripture, there is no book, no philosophical book, no religious book that can claim that these are the words of God actually as spoken by God. Because if you look at Bible also, when Jesus Christ says something, he's saying, I am the Son of God. So those are the words of coming from the Son of God. Prophet Muhammad said, I am the messenger of God. So there is no scripture that exists that can say that these are the words coming directly from God. All the other scriptures, all the other Vedic literatures, they are written about God. They describe God, but there is nowhere a direct conversation with God except in Bhagavad Gita. And since Bhagavad Gita is so unique in the world, so we should actually be very careful in reading this. We should be very sincere in reading this. It's really a special conversation, the only one that exists in all the Vedic scriptures put together. So, what was Krishna and Arjuna doing in the battlefield of Kurukshetra? And how did this conversation between them, called Gita, it took place? Now let's see what is the relationship of Krishna and Arjuna and how did it all happen. The conversation between Arjuna and Krishna is one of the greatest philosophical and religious dialogue known to the mankind. It took place just before the war of Mahabharata started. And the war was between the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra and 5 sons of Pandu. Let's see who is Dhritarashtra and who is Pandu. Dhritarashtra and Pandu were the brothers. They were born in the Kuru dynasty. And Kuru dynasty is something which descended from King Bharat, who was the former ruler of earth. Former ruler, not at the time of Parikshit Maharaj, but much before that. So Dhritarashtra was the elder son and Pandu was the younger son. Actually, they also had one more brother. Dhritarashtra and Pandu had one more brother. His name is Vidur, and he was from another wife of the same father, and he was also a part of Kuru dynasty. Now Dhritarashtra was the elder son, but he was blind. He was born blind, and so the throne which could have come to Dhritarashtra, it was passed on to his younger son Pandu. Pandu was very efficient in every aspect. He was really, really very intelligent, very great warrior, and so it was given to Pandu. But Pandu, he died at the early age. We are not going into the details. We are just looking at the history of Gita, where it came from, because Mahabharata is too long. So when Pandu died at the early age, he had 5 children. What was the name of the 5 children? Yudhishthir, Bhim, Arjun, Nakul and Sahadev. And they all came under the care of Dhritarashtra, who became the king for the time being. Thus the sons of Dhritarashtra and the sons of Pandu, they grew up together in the same royal household. Both were trained by the military arts. Who was the guru of all of these sons of Pandu and Dhritarashtra? What was it? Dronacharya. Wow, very quick. Yes, Dronacharya was and which is that place now where Dronacharya was teaching them this? Now on this Gurgaon, yes. Gurugram is that place where Dronacharya was teaching them. Okay. Now sons of Dhritarashtra, especially the eldest one. What was the name of the eldest son of Dhritarashtra? Duryodhan. Excellent, Keshav. So Duryodhan, he always hated and envied the Pandavas. Pandavas means sons of Pandu. And on the other side, the blind and the weak-minded Dhritarashtra, he also always wanted his own sons and not the Pandus to inherit the kingdom. So this is the reason which led to the Mahabharata. So thus Duryodhan, with Dhritarashtra's consent, he plotted to kill all the 5 sons of Pandu. He decided to kill the sons of Pandu. It was because of the careful protection of the uncle Vidur and their cousin Lord Krishna that Pandavas always got escaped from many attempts done by Duryodhana. Duryodhana tried to kill Pandavas many times, but they all got escaped every time. So what was the relationship between Pandavas and Krishna? So the Lord Krishna was not an ordinary man. He was the supreme personality of Godhead who descended on the earth. For what purpose? What was the purpose of Lord Krishna's coming to earth? So he descended on the earth and was playing the role of a prince in a contemporary dynasty, but his actual purpose was to re-establish dharma on the planet earth. Yes. In this role, he was a nephew of Pandu's wife Kunti. And who is Kunti? Kunti is the mother of all Pandavas. Kunti Maharani. So Krishna would always protect Pandu's sons because they were his cousin brothers. And also because Krishna came to protect the religion. And he knew that the 5 sons of Pandu are very religious. So he always wanted to protect them, not just because they were his cousins, but also because he knew that they are the ones who will establish dharma. So ultimately, however, the clever Duryodhana challenged the Pandavas to the gambling match. And in the past, in the old times, when a Kshatriya is invited for, fighting a war or for a gambling match, the Kshatriya cannot say no to that. This was the rules of the Kshatriyas. So he had to go for the Pandavas had to go for the gambling match. During that match, Duryodhana and his brothers, they took the possession of Draupadi. It so happened that not only the money and the possessions, but even Draupadi came in as a part of the that gambling match. And Duryodhana wanted to strip her naked in front of the entire assembly of princes and the kings, in front of the entire assembly. So it was because of Krishna that Draupadi got saved. But in the gambling, Pandavas lost all their kingdoms and they were forced to go for 13 years of exile. Now, after returning from exile, what happened? The Pandavas rightfully requested for their kingdom. That now we have come back, so give us the part of the Kuru dynasty. And they asked from Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. But Duryodhana, he bluntly refused to give the kingdom to Pandavas. He got greedy. See, all the characters of Mahabharata, we can learn a lot from them. We can learn things like the fate of gambling. We can learn from the character of Duryodhana. We can learn from each character has a lot to teach to us. So I advise all of you to also start reading Mahabharata whenever you get time. Maybe not now, you are reading Gita now, but later after this, it's very important to also read Mahabharata. So what happened then? The Pandavas, they reduced their request not to get the entire or the half of the dynasty, Kuru dynasty, but they said, okay, give us just 5 villages. But what did Duryodhana say? He said arrogantly that I wouldn't spare the land enough to hold even the tip of the pin for you. So he refused to give even that much of the land that would hold the tip of the pin. So throughout all this, Pandavas were very tolerant and forbearing. But now it looked like war is going to happen. It's inevitable, the war. Now, all the kings, then when the war comes, then all the kings, they got, some take the sides of Duryodhana and some took the sides of Pandavas. This is how the, military strength is created. And from that point of view, the military strength of Kuru dynasty, from Duryodhana's military strength was far superior than to the Pandavas, which was led by Arjuna. So therefore it appeared like Kurus or the Kauravas will be easily able to defeat the army of the Pandavas. But what happened? Who won? Pandavas. And Pandavas, why did Pandavas won in the Mahabharata? What was one single reason? Oh my God, you all know Krishna. Everybody is so intelligent. So, how did Krishna came into Mahabharata? So, Krishna was basically friend on both the sides because both were the families to him. And Krishna didn't want to be seen as a partial on any of the sides. So when Arjuna from Pandava sides and the Duryodhana from Kaurava side, they came to meet Krishna, to get favor from him, he told them that both of them, he told to both of them that one side he can give all his army, and on the other side he can give himself unarmed, and that he will not fight, with the promise that he will not fight. So on one side there is entire big army of Krishna, a very special, very powerful army of Krishna, and on the other side he said, it'll be me who will not have any arm, any weapons, and I will not fight, just me. So you can imagine Duryodhana, and Duryodhana got the first choice to decide what you want. One can get this and one can get this. And Duryodhana got the first choice. So naturally, Duryodhana being the political genius, what did he do? He took away the Krishna's army. And what was left was unarmed Krishna, who came to the Arjuna's side. So Krishna, although he had agreed not to fight, he offered to drive the chariot of Arjuna, because he was just driving the chariot. He had no weapon in his hand. He was not fighting, just to drive the chariot. And that is how the famous image of Bhagavad Gita came about. The picture of Krishna driving Arjuna's chariot and Arjuna behind him riding on the chariot and fighting the battle. So Arjuna wanted his friend Krishna on his side, and so he was very happy with this arrangement of Duryodhana. He wanted Krishna, and Arjuna got Krishna, and Duryodhana wanted Krishna's powerful army, Narayani Sena, and so he was very happy. So both were very happy with the arrangements, and all these arrangements were done by Krishna. Krishna knew that if he would offer this, Duryodhana would always take the army, and he would not never ask for Krishna. So this was Krishna's arrangement. So now another thing very important for us to understand is, what is the meaning of becoming a chariot? Is a great we can see great love of Krishna in this. When somebody becomes a chariot, it's not just sitting and riding the horses. There is a lot of work that the chariot has to do. Every evening, the chariot has to clean the horses. He has to get them ready for the next day. Krishna was doing that. When the warrior, when he is fighting, he has the dhanush in his hand, and his hands are busy at that time. If he has to tell to the chariot to turn towards the left, he would have to put his foot on the shoulder of the chariot, on the left foot of the chariot, to charioteer, to take the left turn, and on the right foot to turn the right. So this is what is the role that Krishna took for Arjuna. So imagine how merciful is Krishna, that he agreed, or he wanted to become the chariot of Arjuna. So now you understand how Krishna and Arjuna ended up sitting on the chariot facing their opponents, their cousin brothers, the Kurus, in the battlefield. It was a very dramatic scene, and both the armies were very strong armies facing each other and ready to engage in the battle. Now Arjuna asked Krishna to place his chariot between the two armies so that he can see his opponents and he can get the clear idea of the situation before the battle starts. So Krishna moved the chariot and Arjuna observed the armies. And what does he see? He sees all his friends, his family members, his guru Dronacharya, who trained him. Practically all his friends and all his family members, they will all die. They will be all killed. Therefore, he was thinking, the victory is pointless. Even if I win, I am loser. It's better to lose than to win, because there is no point in this victory. So this is what is the beginning of the song of the Lord, Bhagavad Gita. And at this point, Arjuna was saying to Krishna that they should just leave the battlefield. We don't want to fight. It's better I beg. I don't want to fight. It's better I being killed in this battlefield, but I don't want to fight. And this is the beginning of what we know today as Bhagavad Gita, the song of God. Now the Gita is not a very long conversation. It's a small conversation. It has just 700 verses. And it was spoken on the battlefield as the two armies were getting ready for the war. Maybe it took just 1 hour or a little bit more. And during that course of the conversation, Arjuna came to the senses, and he realized that his duty was to actually surrender to the Lord Krishna, and do what Krishna wanted, and not what he is estimating as a fate of this battle. So actually this entire arrangement was done by Krishna so that the Bhagavad Gita could be spoken. Arjuna is bewildered and appears to be in the illusion, but we understand this that this is also Krishna's arrangement. If Arjuna is not confused and bewildered, then there will be no need for Krishna to speak Bhagavad Gita to clear up his confusion. Krishna is not speaking the Bhagavad Gita for Arjuna's benefit only. It is for the benefit of everyone. Yes. And you may ask now, Krishna spoke this conversation to Arjuna about 5,000 years ago in a battlefield. How is it that we have this conversation in the book now? So, may I ask you this question? Who is the compiler? Oh, before I ask the question, I get the answer now. Oh, so I'm talking to the wrong audience. I should be on the other side, you should be on this side. We have the Bhagavad Gita. It's coming from Vyasadeva. Okay, Vyasadeva is the literacy incarnation of Krishna. He is a Sahitya avatar of Krishna. And he is the one who compiled this conversation. Now it has come to us. He is the compiler of the entire epic of Mahabharata. So, it is not that Bhagavad Gita was invented by Krishna 5,000 years ago. And it was not the first time that he spoke to Arjuna. No. Krishna says, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to sun god Vivashwan. Vivashwan is sun god. And Vivashwan instructed it to his son Manu. Manu is the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructed this to Ikshvaku, his son. The supreme science was thus received through disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it appears to be lost. This is something which Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, 4.1 and 4.2. So that this science was lost, and this was coming from disciplic succession, it got lost. So to re-establish this knowledge, Krishna gave this knowledge to Arjuna, because this knowledge was lost. And imagine this knowledge was given to the kings of the planets. Who is Vivashwan? Vivashwan is the king of sun planet. They had to rule the planet, and they had to give the right sanskaras to the citizens so that they can go through self-realization, they can go back home, back to Godhead, all the citizens of that planet. This was the knowledge given to the kings. It was not even meant for ordinary people, it was meant for the kings, because this knowledge is so powerful. This knowledge is for the delivering of the mankind, delivering of the citizens of that planet. So this is how it was given to Vivashwan, and Vivashwan then gave to his son, and then he gave to his son. This is how it was coming in the disciplic succession in the hands of the kings. So this was such a powerful knowledge for the kings. So here Krishna is giving the history of Bhagavad Gita, where it is coming from, stretching it way back at the time when the Krishna instructed this to Vivashwan, sun god. And Srila Prabhupada estimated this time how many years ago? At least 120 million years ago. And that is the time from where Bhagavad Gita is coming. In human society, Bhagavad Gita is existing for 2 million years ago. For last 2 million years. So Bhagavad Gita is not a new book which came just 5,000 years ago. Whatever we read, like, okay, Bible came 2,400 years ago, or any of these scriptures they all came within these 5,000 years. But Bhagavad Gita, 120 million years ago. 120 million years ago. This is the history of Bhagavad Gita. This is the eternal knowledge. This is the Shashwat Gyan. Although the Bhagavad Gita is the most ancient book, it is studied still by the millions and millions of people, and these teachings of Krishna can solve every problem that we face in today's life. Even the today's modern life of technology, we can solve all the problems. We are in the same situation like Arjun. What is the situation of Arjun? We also get attached to the things and to the people like Arjuna was. We also get anxious and bewildered like Arjuna. We also lose the courage time to time and feel so much confused just like Arjuna. Arjuna is really representing our state of mind. He is not really talking to Krishna as his situation. He is there because of Krishna's arrangement to represent our state of mind in that battlefield. And Krishna is Arjuna's spiritual master in that battlefield. And he is giving the knowledge, he is giving the message of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna and gives him this perfect knowledge. And what does this perfect knowledge does? With this perfect knowledge, Arjuna's attachments, they turns into detachment. His anxieties, they turn into determination. Determination towards fulfilling his duty. His loss of courage turns into full strength, full power. His confusions, they turns into clarity. And in the end, what does he do? He fought the war. He fought the war with full courage. And he became victorious. Not only he won the war, but also he won the goodness over the evil. He did his religious occupation, his dharma, of protecting the spiritual journey of all the living entities in many, many centuries after that war. So today we are sitting here 50 centuries after Mahabharata. 50 centuries have passed. And we are sitting here today, and until today we can see there is a dharma in place. There are churches, there are temples, there are dargah, there are all these places of worship exist today because there was a protection of dharma at that time at 5000 years ago. Everyone today we can see they are having some kind of a spirituality. They are worshipping someone higher than themselves. Maybe the names are different. Somebody calls Krishna, somebody calls Jesus or Prophet Muhammad or Shiva or Santoshi Ma. Some places people worship mountains and any other form of demigods. But there is a natural tendency in human today to seek God. This is the result of Mahabharata. This is what happened 5000 years ago, that spirituality, the principles of religions were protected. If they were not protected at that time, although this is also a misleading civilization we can see, but imagine what could have happened if this much of religion was not protected 5000 years ago. So from time to time, Krishna comes or sends some of his associates on the earth. Whenever there is too much of irreligion, he sends someone to establish dharma. So this is the main occupation of God. God tells in Bhagavad Gita that although he is not bound by any activity, still he is always doing this activity of establishing dharma and doing the protection of his devotees. So this is the class of today. Let us conclude the session with Harinam. Is Radhika here?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.